concern of mine, especially with the fact that you know, Conor McGregor has been able to have his way, and I noticed that in the press conference for the McGregor Dos Anjos fight, one of the analysts, one of the reporters, I forget his name, chubby guy, curly hair, nice cat, real smart. He's always asking the right questions. He mentioned to Conor, he said, you know, hey, is there any beef between you and the UFC? You know, I heard you felt that Conor Sports and Entertainment, or McGregor Sports and Entertainment would be able to be something that would compete with the UFC. So in essence, not only is he hinting at perhaps an offshoot of McGregor having his own kind of like brand, or even like combining brands like Fedor wanted to do with the UFC. Yeah. Hinting at that is already taboo, right? But the fact that he's saying that there might be beef between him and the UFC, and the fact that he has so much pull in the UFC in terms of how he makes the decision and how he insinuates that, you know, oh, I had to get Dos Anjos a hotel in Brazil for this fight, and oh, I had to fly him out, and so on and so forth. He's making it seem like he's in there making those decisions.
Yeah, it was weird. Now, I watched the press conference, and I'm kind of a fan of Conor McGregor.
Yes.
I'm a fan of Conor McGregor in the cage.
Yes.
I'm a fan of Conor McGregor when he's dealing with fans. But when he has an opponent, the stuff he says, it makes my skin crawl.
Yeah.
He basically called out Rafael Dos Anjos for being an immigrant.
Yes.
And people, haha, that's so funny. It's like, that is an awful thing to say. Like,
yeah. And here's the thing, though, you know, and to justify it for Conor, like, don't get me wrong, I don't want to jump the bandwagon for Conor. You know, he has talked the talk and walked the walk, so I want to give him credit where credit is due. But I do feel like he's picking on smaller people. He's a guy that's willing to go compete at 170 and fighting at 45 because he knows he has the size advantage, the reach advantage on people like that. When he fought Aldo, knowing he had not only did he have a 2 to 3 inch height advantage, but he also had a 4-inch reach advantage. You'll notice that during that fight, although he was able to connect with Aldo at the same time, because Aldo actually caught him with a hook to the temple, and you'll see that he has a red mark on the temple. If Aldo had equivalent reach, they would have been, you know, who knows, right? But in Conor's defense, hey, okay, cool. He stopped the greatest 145, the undefeated 10-year champion, right? Okay, cool. I want to give him his props, as you mentioned, in the cage. Outside of the cage, he's doing what he needs to do to promote the fights. And it just so happens it goes right back to what I was talking about regarding Miocic, you know, emphatically demanding a title shot, and how Frankie is not necessarily reluctant because he's doing it the way true fight fans like us, we want to see him do it. Look, I'm going out there humbly. I'm going out there and being a great competitor. I'm competing against everybody. I'm beating people up. And I deserve the actual title shot. Right? Because he's out there kicking people's asses. But a dude who has a bigger mouth and speaks up and asks for it is going to be the guy to get it because the fans are going to watch that. Their fans are going to want to see that. That's why other fighters are jumping the bandwagon when it comes to that. I'm not going to say jumping the bandwagon. Let's just say some people are starting to speak their mind. Like Ben Rothwell, he wasn't that reluctant in the beginning to do it. He was doing it, but not as much as he's doing it now. You know who else stepped up and started doing it even more? Ferguson, El Cucuy. Now he got the sunglasses on, he got the shades, the necklace on. He's acting like a straight WWE wrestler. But what he's saying is slick.
He's so. Do you follow TJ Dillashaw on like Instagram or anything?
No, I have not. But what about him?
Everyone up until the Cruz fight, and even after the Cruz fight, everyone posts like little snake emojis or whatever on every picture he makes.
Yes.
Because Hunter called him a snake in the grass.
And that's kind of the difficulty when it comes down to it with the language barrier with Aldo and with Anderson. Anderson, yes, can articulate some simple thoughts to people and sometimes somewhat complex thoughts in English, but primarily we know his first language is Portuguese. He's from Brazil. The same thing with Aldo. So guys like Conor who speak English have that edge on them in America for the perception of the fans here in America. I'm sure that the things that he was saying to defend himself, the things that Aldo was saying to defend himself resonated with the people from Brazil. I'm like, yeah, you know, Aldo, yeah, tell him, you tell him. The thing is we don't understand clearly exactly what he's saying, even though they give us these translators from time to time. But this goes back to what I was talking about regarding Frankie not speaking up. It's not making the fans like gravitate to that. Like, man, Frankie said this and Frankie said that. You guys should give Frankie a, or create that allure so the UFC says, man, you know what? A lot of the fans are really chiming in on that YouTube video of Frankie Edgar saying, hey, I'll kick his ass in this amount of time, so on and so forth. Kind of like what Nurmagomedov tried to do early before he continued to get injured before his fights. So Conor, in his defense, and I say this sparingly, but in his defense, even when he fought the American fighter at 145 pounds, the kid that trains out in ATT,
Poirier?
Dustin Poirier, a little hillbilly from the country of wherever, he was still being derogatory with his remarks. He was still speaking in that aspect. So yes, in his defense, that was something that he was doing even prior against these other fighters. So I understand how it could be foreseen as a prejudice, but this is fighting. Like, if people aren't ready for it, you know what I mean? Like, you ain't ready for fighting either, because this is a fight. He's trying to get these guys emotional.
That's where it gets rough.
Well, here's the thing. When he falls, he's going to fall hard because of everything that he said, so he's going to have to eat his words, right? I'm sure he's prepared for that mentally to a certain extent. These fans, as you mentioned what they did with Dillashaw, how they put Snake on his pictures, these fans are very unforgiving. They'll turn their back on you in a heartbeat. The same way they did with Aldo when he lost. They were like all talking trash, like, about how he competed and so on and so forth. And even Dos Anjos was like, man, you know what? They were actually tweeting on Dos Anjos' page, talking to Dos Anjos, saying, hey, don't lose like Aldo, and don't let him do this to you like Aldo, and this and that. And Dos Anjos is sitting back feeling like, you know what? If you guys are these kind of fans, like, I don't even want you as fans. You know what I mean? Because they're quick to turn on you like so swiftly. So yes, we'll see his home country support him because he constantly claims Ireland. But all the other people who jump the bandwagon or those niche fans will see him get him mopped, and they'll be like, oh, he got what he deserved, talking all that shit, right? But there's that situation where you have the other individuals who like that Tank Abbott perspective where he just speaks his mind, and he says what he's going to do, and he goes out there and he does it. Whether he wins or loses, they still love it. They're like, yeah, he went out there and punched you anyway in the face and broke your jaw, and you went to the hospital, and he's doing the post-fight interview, Like, they love that. And we know Dos Anjos is a tough task for anybody. If he was able to do what he did to Cerrone and how he was able to control, to me, one of the best 155ers, that's Pettis. But essentially, what Conor's doing is that he's speaking to the hearts of men that want to be able to talk trash and actually be able to go out there and back it up. When they see somebody doing that, they think that's pretty cool and that's pretty awesome. But they're quick to turn their back when they see somebody doing that, get mopped and say, yeah, he deserved it for talking all that trash. That's because they're not the type of person that's willing to go out there and talk that trash and be forced to eat their words. Very similar to what Dominic Cruz was telling to TJ Dillashaw. He said, well, tell me how you're going to beat me. And Dillashaw was like, I'm going to knock you out. And that was the beauty of it, because Dillashaw actually came in and said, well, my hit ratio is higher than yours, so I got more connection ratio. He was like, well, yes, but against people who are still targets. Like, he had the rebuttal for the facts, because he asked him for facts, and the facts that he gave him, made sense. And then, boom, he countered with the facts. It's similar to like when my nephew showed me, look at Westbrook's stat sheet, another triple-double. And I said, well, did they win? It's like, okay, the stat sheet doesn't mean shit, at the end of the day, depending on your opponent. And that's what I was mentioning prior when everybody was like, when we talked about it and you had your pick and I was picking on Dom, I was like, man, Dom's going to do it. And, he didn't stop Dillashaw. Dillashaw wasn't hurt. He didn't get rocked or anything like that. So it's a testament to and the reason why you believe in Dillashaw. He's tough. He's gnarly. He'll go for the kill. He is that fighter that's going to try to initiate. But we're dealing with someone who wasn't that still target like he was talking about when he was referring to Barao and how his connection ratio was in comparison to Dominic Cruz. And Dominic Cruz, everybody had praised him for his footwork and made the comparison to Dillashaw, and they said, no. He was like, no, this is a completely different thing. And we saw that dynamic happen. But the fact that the way he was analyzing it and the way he was explaining and rationalizing how he would obtain that victory, it made me believe, especially with the level of confidence that he had behind it. Especially, it's very similar to what Conor's saying currently. He's like, well, I have this much of a reach advantage on Dos Anjos, and I have this much of a height advantage on Dos Anjos. I'm gonna put him to sleep. And I'm like, you know, he makes kind of sense. So it makes you almost want to believe that he has a real method of victory. But at the same token, when you look at how much of an animal Dos Anjos is, it's like, man, he's got a lot of courage to step up to the 55 division, even though the weight discrepancy isn't what we would see from 155 to 170.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But it's still an individual, a larger person. So for like Sage Northcutt, he did his welterweight debut this past weekend, and he was fighting against an individual who has to cut to make weight to 170. So his punching power, you'll see that he connects clearly with quite a few reverse punches. However, he wasn't able, although he was able to hurt him initially, he wasn't able to stop him. And I think that resonated in his mind, because you give this guy everything you got and he's still standing on the other side punching you back. It's quite discouraging.